Hey, welcome to the first video in the series on building an LA2A. So we're going to start off by looking up all the information we need for this project and ordering the parts in this video. And then the next videos we'll work on machining the chassis and starting to build the whole thing. So here's a picture of what we're going to build, the real version that we're going to try and copy. So I'm going to start off with just doing a simple search for LA2A DIY, do it yourself. And one of the first things you'll find, first link in this case, is recproaudio.com, which is a great site for this. This is really the source most people have used to build this. So you go down and you've got a whole bunch of different documents. So I'm going to open all these up in different links so we can look at them. So the layout, the schematic, heater layout, and parts list. So starting off with the layout. So here's just the physical chassis and how the parts are laid out. Definitely want to save this, have access to this. I went ahead and saved all these documents to my computer so I didn't have to call them up off the internet every single time. So one important thing about this is that you want to use this as a reference of where to place things, but you want to make sure you're building based on the schematic. It will really enhance your understanding of what you're doing and make it easier to find a problem if there is one. So here's the schematic. Pretty typical LA2A schematic. There are a couple slight variations, but this one works great. And this shows all our parts, and the part numbers here relate to the part numbers here, and that's important to know. There's also a layout for how you're going to run the heater wiring, and the parts list, which is a spreadsheet. So you want to have all that information ready for you. Take a look at it, and we're going to start then with the parts list. So I've got that downloaded to Excel sitting right here. So this is the actual one that I got off of this website. Now, it would be nice if you could just go put all these part numbers in to the sources they say and make them work. The reality is that doesn't happen. Most of these part numbers no longer work. So we're going to go through and find correct part numbers. In addition, there are specific components that I like and want to use, so I'll show you some of those. So we're going to do most of our ordering from a site called Mouser Electronics. There are a couple things we'll have to get from other places, and I'll show you as we go. The main other one will be Antique Electronics, which has a website called tubesandmore.com. So we'll just start off with the resistors. These are all laid out according to the component number. So one of the first things I do is separate them so I don't have to keep copying down, because there are 68K resistors that are lower in this list. So it's nice to put them in order so all the 68Ks go together, all the 220Ks to go together. So I'm going to select just all the resistors, sort the data, don't have a header, so this is row B, or column B, excuse me, that I'm going to sort by. So now I know if I got a bunch of 220Ks together, 470Ks together. That way I don't have to go find each one. So we'll start with this first one, so 100K. So I'm going to go to the Mouser website, mouser.com. Now, one of the nice things about Mouser is they have an unbelievable number of parts. But the bad thing about that is that if you type in 100K resistor, so let's do that, 100, and we'll click stocked. That's really important to do, otherwise you'll see a lot of things that you can't actually get from them without waiting a long time. So even their stocked resistors, we'll look at how many 100K resistors they have. So they have 1,648 1 kilo ohm resistors. So that's a lot to wade through. Now we can isolate it in a couple different ways. So first off, we have potentiometers, trimmers, and rheostats, or resistors. In this case, we're looking just for a fixed resistor, so we click on resistors. That only cuts 4 out. So, but then we have the type of resistor, and a couple different ways of separating this. So over here are what the resistor is made from: metal oxide, metal foil, carbon composition. And then over here are more their physical attributes. So SMD, or surface mount resistors, through-hole resistors, variable resistors. So we're looking for through-hole resistors. So we'll click on that first. And that means that's the way they physically mount to either the printed circuit board or the turret boards in this case. If you get surface mount resistors, you'll have a hugely difficult time dealing with them, so you don't want to do that. So now we're left with what they're actually made of. Now my preference is for metal film. There are some resistors on this parts list that are marked, wrong parts list, by the people who originally made it CC after the value. And so they're saying they think those should be carbon composition. The resistors when this was built were made from carbon. So there's some places where people think that they should still be carbon. I don't agree with that, and I'll just make all mine metal film. Leave that up to you. You can do some Googling and see why people say whatever they say. But in that case, you would want to choose carbon composition for those. Pure carbon composition. I'm just going to go with metal film. So I'm going to click on that to separate to metal film. And now there are few enough matches, 171, that we get some more specific characteristics. Axial or radial. So axial is an axle through the resistor. This is the way we're used to seeing resistors. Radial means that the two connections are coming out the same end. Not very common for resistors, but they do have some. So we're going to go ahead and say we want axial. Because I typed in 100K, it's giving me a couple of variations on that: 10 ohms, 100 kiloohms, or 100.7 kiloohms. I do want just 100K, so I'm going to click on that. So I'm down to 165. Again, make sure that stock is checked, and also enable smart filtering, because what that does is take options off as you start to click things. Now, my preference for resistors is to use a company called Vishay. So I'm going to select them under manufacturer, and that cuts down to 109. So you can see that they are one of the main manufacturers of resistors. I also like their reliability, and they're my preferred company. And then we can go over and look at some other things. The series, there are a couple of these series that I particularly like. I'm not going to worry about that yet. We want for this half-watt resistors, so 500 milliwatt. We'll select those. Now we're down to 30. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that, and then we can see them down here. It's taking a while, isn't it? So now we're down to 30 resistors that we can look at. And any of these would work. Other things you might want to look for in this particular case, because of the way we're going to mount these, the length of the resistor is actually somewhat important. So I'm going to go ahead and select the longest ones and just see what I get. So now the series I get, I don't see. So let me go to 10. Actually, I want to see what the 14s are. And some of this for you will just be an experimentation and looking around and seeing what there is. These are 1%, which is good. So there's not a lot of variation in the values. Half watt. And the RN series is one that I like, so I'm going to go ahead and choose these. And we can get these. And so this is my part number. So I'll go ahead and move that to here. Those are 27 cents a piece. And then you notice that this part number is 71RN65D/F/100K. So one of the things you can do is try saying, well, for my 10K, can I use the same part number? So put that up here and change it to 10K instead. Let's see if that works. Very slow connection today. And yes, that did work. So that would be one way to go through and see if you find all the resistors that way. You might find that you can get a lot of them that way, but not all of them. So let's go ahead and put that part number down. And it was 27 cents as well. Now I would recommend, as you're doing this, not just copying the parts numbers to the Excel spreadsheet, but also ordering the parts. And even if you're planning on building 3 or 4 of these, I would put down how many you need for this particular project. So we need 1 10K, 2 actually. So here's a 2 watt. We don't want that to be the half watt we're getting, but this one that they're calling carbon composition, I'd like to have that as just the regular 10K as well. So we can copy that down. Again, that's 0.27. So let's go ahead and order buy 2 of those. And all this is doing is putting in my shopping cart. One nice thing you can do with Mouser is you can save your shopping cart and call it LA2A and then say, okay, I want to build LA2A. I'm going to build 4 of them. Let's order 4 of this shopping cart. So it's a nice way to be able to save that. And we're going to go back to the 100K because I didn't actually order that. We'll order 1 of those. Now, another way to do this, a slightly different way of doing it besides changing that part number. So I'm going to go back to where we found, so here. So here's where we found this part number to start with. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to get rid of 100K in my search, and also here where I limited it to 100 kilo ohms. And I'm going to apply, let's see what I get. So now in that same type of resistor, I get a whole bunch of resistor values. Now I've got 0.1% and 1%. I'm going to go ahead and select 1% just to limit my selection. So now I should be getting all the RN65D series of resistors. So now I can simply go through here and select the value I need. So let's look at the next one we need. Next one we need is a 2 watt. So we'll skip that because that won't be the same series. I need a 1K, so we'll go to that. So 1K, apply filter. And there are 4 different ones here. And so this is cut tape. So that's a long tape, tape on both ends of the resistors and a long reel of them. We don't need that. That's good for machines, but not for the way we're doing it. These are really expensive for whatever reason. I'm not sure what's different about those. Cheapest one is fine. We don't need these specialty ones. So that's the part number we need, and we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. Now this where it says 1K, 2K7, that means that resistor value is somewhere between 1K and 2.7K. 1K usually works fine in this case. You might need a research to find that out. You might just order a couple values. I happen to know that 1K usually works, so that's what we'll order. You can also see in their part number that that was what they decided on as well. And then there's one 0.5K stuck in here before this other carbon composition one. So we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 of those. Back to Mouser and order 5 of those. Again, this is just putting in our cart, which we'll be able to save. So those are resistors. So let's look at a different value. So the 2 watt. So this one we'll need to do a little differently. But I would go through and do all of your half watt resistors. So any that don't say 2 watt or 1 watt, something larger. And put all those values in using this system. So now that I picked 1K, I go ahead and clear that from the search. Apply the filters. And then I'll have my new values and I can go through. So again, go through and find all your resistor values that way, your resistor part numbers that way. And then for our 2 watt resistor, so this up here shows us where we're searching if we search down here. If I go back to searching up here, I search everything that Mouser has. This will just search passive resistors that are through hole and metal film. And that's what I want, so that's fine. So I'm just going to go through and get rid of some things. So I'm going to get rid of tolerance and power rating. Apply the filters and see what I get. So now look at power rating and see, and I don't get 2 watt. So something's still there that isn't working for me. So I'm going to try up here where I'm searching everything. I still want to try and get Vishay. So Vishay 2 watt 1K. Make sure that's the right value. So 10K 2 watt. So not 1K but 10K. Again, click stocked. Nothing's worse than finding part numbers and then realizing that they're not in stock. Now I have some potentiometers and some resistors. I want resistors, so let's select that. That'll get rid of some that we actually won't be able to use. And then again, it's giving me a bunch of values, even though I said 10K. So we'll choose 10K. And then our wattage, we want 2 watt. There are 13 remaining. Now over here in termination style, we have axial or SMD. So let's go ahead and do axial. So now we're left with 4. So there we go, a Vishay metal film, 2 watt, 10K, 5%. That's 34 cents. For 49 cents, we can get a 1%. So I would do that. Let's buy one of those. And again, that just means it's more likely to be the exact value you want. When the LA2As were built, originally most of them were 5% resistors. So 1% is more accurate than it would have been originally, but that should be fine. If you want to go with the 5% and save yourself the 15 cents, that's certainly fine. And again, if you want to go with somebody other than Vishay, that's fine. These are just the resistors I have found over the years to be really reliable and good for me to use. So those are resistors. Okay, now we're on to our capacitors. So here are our capacitors. This parts list is nice so that it's divided into different types of components. So if you wanted to, you could go ahead and order these by value. The first one is 0.02, and we've got a couple of other of those. But just for expediency, I'm going to leave it like it is now. Find the part number from this first one. Now, I happen to know when I copy and paste that into Mouser that it's going to tell me it doesn't know what I'm talking about, because that part number is no longer good. So a couple things we can do. First, we can look at that capacitor, which is C2, or excuse me, C1, and find that on our layout. There's our layout. So C1 is right here. So that doesn't give us much information, but knowing that it's there, if we then go to the photo, There's that transformer. There's the first tube socket, V1. There's that transformer. So there's the first tube socket. So that orange guy is our C1. And time doing this tells me that that's an orange drop capacitor, which is a type of film capacitor. So that would give me a lot to go on. But since you might not know that, probably wouldn't know that, another way to go about it is to take that part number that Mouser didn't know anything about it and just do a Google search for it and see what we get. And the first one we get is Vishay Sprague orange drop. And notice it's a Mouser link. So if we look here and find it on this page, I'll zoom in. So these part numbers aren't quite the same. It's 75.715 is the part number we're looking for. So here it is, 75-715 P400-V022. So here it is right here. Now this actually has a Mouser link in it, so I'm going to click that just to see what happens. And it still says it doesn't know anything about it. So that part number still isn't working, but it tells us what the component is. It's a Vishay type 715P polypropylene film capacitor. So I'm going to take that information to Mouser and try searching Vishay 715P capacitor. Hit stocked so I don't get things that aren't stocked. And if you look at the parts list, there are a number of other parts, capacitors that have a very similar part number with just the value at the end different. So that's why I didn't put in the value now, because we'll be able to get more this way. So click on capacitors. We know it's a capacitor. Anytime you can separate with links up here, that will help you in your results. So now we have different capacitor types: film capacitors, aluminum electrolytic, MLCCs, which are multi-layer ceramic capacitors. Going back to what we saw here, it is a film capacitor. So click on film capacitors. And Mouser is very slow. Mouser, because of the amount of data it's parsing and the amount it gets used, is not always the fastest site, so just be prepared for that. So there are two different companies. Go ahead and go with Vishay, which is the one we saw. Still quite a few remaining. So we know other things we know about it. It's a 400 volt. I'll go ahead and click apply to get rid of everybody but Vishay. So we also know that it's a polypropylene film and that we were looking at 400 volt. That's where our part number was. So we can choose both of those things. Voltage rating 400 volt. And that got rid of any distinction between polyester and polypropylene. We could also just go choose polypropylene. And 400 volt. And that gives us the same number remaining as when we just clicked 400 volt. So we're going to hit apply and see what we get. So now I would say, okay, those all look like what we saw. Some of them are gray, but most of them look about the same. So we'll then go in and find our value. So the first one we wanted was a 0.02. Is that right? Yes, 0.02. And notice it's 0.022 on this part number. That's a more standard value, so we might have to change to that. So we'll look at 0.02, 0.022. So we'll search that. So one remaining. So that's the one we want. Now, notice the picture looks different, but it says images are for reference only. So let's look at the data sheet, which is right here. Let's see if it tells us anything more. So it doesn't. metallized polypropylene film capacitor. So it's not exactly the same as this, but it's close enough. I would stick with it. So that's that's a good starting point. They don't have to exactly look the same. If you're not sure about that, you can always ask me which one of these makes most sense. I'm going to take Vichy off and see what the other ones look like. I could go back. So get rid of the voltage. Ratings 2. Okay, so here we had Cornell Dubular and Vichy. So let's see what CDE, which is Cornell Dubular, see what theirs look like. So they have some 0.022s that are actually called orange drops. So whether, and that's just again a trade name, so it doesn't have to be that, but these are probably going to be closer now. That's kind of a pretty roundabout way that I found that. So again, if you get into that situation and you're not sure, please ask me. But hopefully that gives you an idea of how to find part numbers when they're not showing up just as they are. And here we see that if I select 400 now, I do just have one left. So this would be the part number I would go with. So I'll copy that and put it in my parts list. And I usually go through and mark in some way as I'm doing these. So those two I just did, so I would probably go through and mark those in yellow, just so I know what's already in my list and what isn't. Some of the other parts that are going to be different. A lot of this is the same process over and over again. The ones from Antique Electronics, again, these part numbers are wrong, so you just keep going through and work on them. As you come up with specific parts you're not sure about, let me know and I'll help you through them. But that's a good starting point. The parts that I recommend are listed on the site in Canvas. So without making this video too much longer, I think that gives you hopefully a good starting point on how to order this stuff. So I've already done this, and I have a parts list complete for the LA2A, and have started ordering these. So any questions, let me know. Hopefully this has been helpful.